In July of 2022, record-breaking rain fell across eastern Kentucky. Within hours, creeks turned to rivers, entire communities were underwater, and the disaster stretched across multiple counties. 45 lives were lost, thousands of families were displaced, and the landscape itself was changed forever. This is the first part of a 4-part series documenting what happened, how recovery unfolded, and what resilience looks like in these mountains. It begins with the night the storm hit. In 2022, we had had rain. We had had rain for like a week and a half. And I knew flooding was possible. But again, here, like, we live in the valleys at the foothills of these mountains, right? And so the creeks and streams are usually like in our backyards, along the roadways. They flood. Flooding's not totally foreign here.
Yeah, in 22 it was the regular weather forecast, chance of storms, and it had rained, and then it rained, and it quit, and it rained, and it quit, and then up in that night it kept raining. So I drove downtown and checked where we usually see water, the first place it may get above a bridge, and it had already jumped that bridge. So I drove to number 1 bottom, which is on the lower end of town, and just started checking it, and it already jumped a bridge down there that it hadn't done in history that I remember. And then by the time I got to the lower end of that bridge, it started moving the vehicle a little bit. So I started calling people that in number 1 bottom, said, hey, and some of them were aware of it. Some of them said their commodes were gurgling and different things, and they were up. But I told them we had just very little time for them to be able to get out of there. We could bring a big truck from the fire station and maybe get them out.
And at 2:30, my mom called me, and she lived about a half a mile away. And she lives on a hillside, and she said, have you looked outside? And I was like, no. And she's like, well, get up and look outside. And I said, well, I can't see the backyard from my window in the upstairs of that house. And she was like, well, look out the front window and see if you see anything. And I was like, I'm not going to see anything. It's a main highway. I live directly across from the post office. And I looked out the front window, and there was just a river between me and the post office.
I got a message that morning that devastating floods were happening. And I had said, oh, I'll be right into work. And our director of construction said, there's no way you're going to get here. And so I drove off the mountain, and he was right. The river was up over the road. There were mudslides covering the other way out. And so I was at home for a day until some local guy on the holler came with his four-wheeler that had a blade on it and cleared the mudslide away, and the river went down. And so I got out the next day, and it was horrific. It was worse than what anybody could imagine, and worse than what I was watching online when I was at home.
We had to be evacuated between floods because it was getting in our home. It was really unsafe and scary, and we lost a lot of our belongings because they were packed up on the first floor, ready to be moved out. And so it was a really surreal situation to buy my first home as a single mother and not have the furniture I'd worked my entire adult life collecting, and not have these mementos that my son had made for me, or his adoption paperwork. All these things were lost. In downtown Neon, Kentucky, few storefronts remained before the flood, but at the heart of the main street stood Bonnie Kintzer's flower shop, Busy Bees. It was more than a business. In the back, Bonnie ran a dance and baton program that became a lifeline for local youth. Bonnie's Silver Spinners troupe has been a staple in Neon for generations. As a child, I was one of Bonnie's Silver Spinners, twirling in parades and learning from her guidance. On the night of the storm in July 2022, 9 feet of water swept through this place. Bonnie's home garage was damaged, but here in Neon, she lost everything.
The morning when I come over here and I seen the whole front go down this building, I was standing over there on my porch, and I could see it lifted that building, and we seen it take it off, full of everything that we'd worked for our whole lives. We lost everything. And I wasn't even thinking about what it was doing over here in town. Someone commented on Facebook and said, prepare yourself before you come over. And I never will forget when I walked up that street. Nothing could have prepared me for that. When I walked up here and I'd seen everything gone, I just started screaming.
For Bonnie and so many others, the storm erased livelihoods and spaces that carried the spirit of their communities. Across eastern Kentucky, families faced the same devastation. What they managed to carry forward, the memories, the fragments, and each other, would shape the journey ahead.